Rome had defeated kings, crushed armies, and taken control of almost everything around it. But then, a foreign general appeared beyond the mountains, where no Roman expected to find him. He brought exhausted soldiers, African elephants, and a plan that seemed completely impossible. His name was Hannibal, and for years Rome would fear that name more than any other. Today, you will practice English while listening to the true story of Rome's greatest enemy. It is a story of courage, brilliant strategy, terrible loss, and one final defeat. Long before Hannibal entered Italy, two powerful cities were fighting for the Mediterranean world. Rome was growing across Italy, building alliances and sending its disciplined legions farther south. Across the sea stood Carthage, a rich city of merchants, sailors, soldiers, and powerful families. Carthaginian ships carried silver, grain, weapons, and trade goods across distant waters. Rome controlled the land. Carthage controlled the sea. Neither power wanted to remain second. Their first great war ended in humiliation for Carthage, and Hannibal's family never forgot it. Hannibal was born into the Barca family, one of Carthage's most ambitious military families. His father, Hamilcar Barca, had fought Rome and watched Carthage lose islands, wealth, and pride. Ancient writers say that Hamilcar took his young son before a sacred altar. There, Hannibal may have promised that he would never become a friend of Rome. Whether the scene happened exactly that way or not, the hatred around him was real. But Hannibal would not fight Rome with anger alone. He would study how Rome could be broken. After its defeat, Carthage began building a new base of power in the Iberian Peninsula. The region offered silver mines, strong warriors, fertile land, and distance from Roman control. Hannibal grew into a soldier there, learning to command men from many different peoples. He learned their languages, understood their customs, and shared the dangers of military life. His soldiers did not follow him only because of rank. Many followed because they trusted him. When their commander was assassinated, the army chose Hannibal to lead them. He was only 26. Hannibal immediately expanded Carthaginian power and defeated tribes that resisted his advance. Each victory gave him more soldiers, more resources, and greater confidence in his own plans. However, one wealthy city remained outside his control. Saguntum, connected politically with Rome. Hannibal surrounded the city, beginning a long and violent siege that Rome watched with growing anger. Saguntum resisted for months, but eventually its defenses failed and Hannibal's army entered the city. Rome demanded punishment. Carthage refused. The argument ended with a declaration of war. The Romans expected Hannibal to defend Hispania, or perhaps attack by sea. Instead, he decided to bring the war directly into Italy through the northern mountains. His route crossed rivers, hostile territory, dangerous passes, and the enormous wall of the Alps. It was not simply a march. It was a gamble with the survival of his entire army. He began with tens of thousands of soldiers, cavalry horses, supplies, and war elephants. Before he even reached the Alps, fighting, desertion, and exhaustion had already reduced his forces. Then the mountains rose before them, covered in snow, ice, fog, and hidden paths. The soldiers came from warm lands. Many had never seen conditions like these before. Narrow paths placed men, horses, and elephants only a few steps from deadly cliffs. Local groups attacked from above, throwing stones and striking when the column was most vulnerable. At night, the cold entered their clothes, their wounds, and their tired bodies. For some soldiers, Rome no longer seemed like the enemy. The mountain itself was the enemy. Hannibal moved among his men, speaking to them and reminding them what waited below. Beyond the snow stood Italy, rich fields, possible allies, and the heart of Roman power. After terrible losses, the survivors finally descended from the mountains into northern Italy. They were hungry, wounded, and far fewer than before. Yet they had achieved the impossible. Roman commanders had prepared to fight him elsewhere. Suddenly, Hannibal was already inside Italy. The crossing had nearly destroyed his army, but it had also given him the one thing he needed: surprise. Some Gallic tribes in northern Italy hated Roman control and saw Hannibal as a possible liberator. They brought warriors, food, horses, and knowledge of the land. His damaged army began to grow. Near the Trasimene River, Hannibal's cavalry met Roman forces in a fast and violent clash. The Roman commander was wounded, and his army withdrew before the situation became even worse. It was not yet a great battle, but the message traveled quickly across northern Italy. The stranger from beyond the Alps was not trapped or dying. He was already winning. Rome sent another army and prepared to stop him near the cold waters of the Trebia River. Hannibal studied the Roman commander and recognized a weakness. He was impatient and eager for glory. Early one morning, his cavalry attacked the Roman camp and then appeared to flee. The Romans followed, crossing the freezing river before many had eaten or properly prepared. Cold and tired, they met Hannibal's army waiting on the other side, warm and ready. Then hidden troops attacked from behind. The Roman formation collapsed under pressure from every direction. Thousands escaped, but the defeat proved that Hannibal understood Roman behavior with frightening accuracy. During the winter, more Gallic warriors joined him, attracted by victory and Roman weakness. When spring arrived, Hannibal moved south, searching for another route toward Rome's Italian allies. Part of the journey crossed flooded marshes, where men walked for days through dirty water. Hannibal became seriously ill and reportedly lost the sight in one of his eyes. His body was weakening, but his ability to read the enemy remained more dangerous than ever. A Roman consul named Flaminius followed him aggressively, determined to stop the invasion. Hannibal entered a narrow area beside Lake Trasimene, surrounded by hills and morning mist. He placed soldiers secretly along the high ground and waited for the Roman column to enter. The Romans marched forward without seeing the enemy hidden above and around them. When the entire army was trapped between the hills and the lake, Hannibal gave the signal. The mist suddenly filled with shouting warriors. Rome had walked into one of history's greatest ambushes. Many Roman soldiers had no time or space to form their normal battle lines. Some fought in small groups. Others entered the lake, hoping the water offered an escape. Flaminius was killed, and much of his army was destroyed or captured within a few hours. The news reached Rome like a nightmare. Another army had disappeared, and Hannibal was moving closer. Families waited for men who would never return. Temples filled with frightened citizens asking for protection. Yet Hannibal did not march directly against Rome. The city's walls were not his true target. Rome's real strength came from the many Italian communities that supplied soldiers, food, and money. Hannibal hoped that repeated Roman defeats would convince those communities to change sides. He often released captured Italian allies while keeping Roman citizens as prisoners. His message was simple. His war was against Rome, not against every people in Italy. For a moment, it seemed possible that the Roman alliance might begin to break apart. Rome responded by choosing a leader who refused to give Hannibal the battle he wanted. Quintus Fabius Maximus understood that fighting Hannibal directly had become dangerously predictable. Instead of attacking, he followed Hannibal from a distance and occupied strong defensive positions. He protected important areas, attacked small groups, and tried to weaken the invaders over time. Many Romans hated this strategy. They believed caution looked like fear and delay looked like weakness. They called Fabius the delayer, sometimes as an insult, but his caution was beginning to work. Then Roman anger defeated Roman patience, and a much larger army was prepared for one decisive battle. In 216 BCE, Rome gathered one of the largest armies it had ever placed in the field. The Romans believed their greater numbers could crush Hannibal's center and finally end the invasion. Hannibal knew what they expected. He arranged his weaker-looking center slightly forward in a curved line. His strongest African infantry waited farther back on both sides, ready but not yet involved. His cavalry stood on the wings, where speed and movement would decide the battle's first stage. Hannibal was not trying to stop the Roman advance. He wanted to invite it deeper. The Roman infantry moved forward in a massive, heavy formation, pressing hard against his center. Hannibal's central line slowly moved backward, bending under pressure but refusing to break. To the Romans, it looked like victory. They pushed farther, becoming more crowded with every step. Meanwhile, Hannibal's cavalry defeated the Roman horsemen and moved behind the enemy army. Then the African infantry on both sides turned inward against the crowded Roman flanks. The Roman army had entered as a powerful spear. Now it was trapped inside a closing circle. Men in the center could barely move, raise their weapons, or understand what was happening. The fighting continued for hours as the space around the Roman soldiers became smaller. By the end, much of Rome's great army had been killed, captured, or scattered. Rome had suffered one of the worst military disasters in its entire history. For Hannibal, Cannae became the perfect expression of patience, movement, psychology, and controlled risk. He had destroyed Rome's army. But destroying an army was not the same as destroying Rome. Several important communities in southern Italy abandoned Rome and joined Hannibal after Cannae. Capua, one of Italy's richest cities, opened its gates and offered him a powerful base. Still, most of Rome's central allies remained loyal, even after so much death and fear. Rome refused to discuss peace. It recruited new soldiers and prepared to continue the war. The Senate limited public mourning, controlled panic, and prevented the city from falling into chaos. Hannibal had expected defeat to break Rome's alliance. Instead, fear made Rome even more determined. Rome returned to the cautious methods of Fabius, avoiding another great battle on Hannibal's terms. Roman armies attacked his allies, recovered towns, and forced him to move constantly. Hannibal remained dangerous, but he could not protect every city that had trusted him. Every lost ally reduced his food, shelter, local support, and influence inside Italy. He needed major reinforcements from Carthage or Hispania, but help arrived slowly and in limited form. While Hannibal waited in Italy, a young Roman commander began attacking the source of his power. His name was Publius Cornelius Scipio, a survivor of Rome's darkest years. Scipio studied Hannibal's methods instead of simply calling them foreign tricks or good luck. He understood the importance of speed, surprise, flexible formations, and strong cavalry support. In Hispania, Scipio captured the main Carthaginian base and weakened Hannibal's family network. He also built relationships with local leaders and attracted support away from Carthage. For the first time, Rome had produced a commander who could think in ways similar to Hannibal. Hannibal's brother Hasdrubal finally left Hispania and crossed the Alps with another army. If the brothers united, Rome might face two Carthaginian armies operating together inside Italy. But Roman forces intercepted Hasdrubal near the Victories River before he could reach Hannibal. His army was defeated, and Hasdrubal was killed during the battle. According to tradition, the Romans threw Hasdrubal's severed head into Hannibal's camp. When Hannibal understood what had happened, he knew that Carthage's hope in Italy was dying. Scipio finished breaking Carthaginian power in Hispania and returned to Rome with growing prestige. He proposed a dangerous plan. Instead of chasing Hannibal, Rome should attack North Africa. Some senators resisted, but Scipio received permission to prepare an invasion from Sicily. He sailed to Africa, gained powerful Numidian cavalry allies, and threatened Carthage itself. Now Carthaginian leaders faced the same fear Hannibal had once created inside Rome. After almost 16 years in Italy, Hannibal was ordered home to defend the city he had left behind. He had entered Italy as a young conqueror. He returned to Africa as a tired veteran. Many of the soldiers around him had followed him through years of hunger, victory, and loss. But his new army also included inexperienced troops and forces that had never fought beside him. Scipio, meanwhile, commanded confident Roman soldiers and the excellent cavalry of the Numidian king Massinissa. Before the final battle, ancient sources describe a meeting between Hannibal and Scipio. They had shaped the war without meeting in battle. Now peace depended on two men who expected war. No agreement was reached. In 202 BCE, their armies prepared to fight near Zama. Hannibal placed war elephants at the front, hoping their charge would break the Roman formation. Scipio prepared open lanes through his infantry and ordered trumpets to create confusion and noise. Some elephants ran through the lanes. Others turned away or caused disorder among Carthaginian troops. The infantry lines then collided, and Hannibal's veterans fought with the discipline of long experience. For a time, the final battle remained uncertain. Then Roman and Numidian cavalry returned from behind. Hannibal's army was attacked from the front and rear, trapped by the kind of movement he understood so well. This time, the circle closed around his own men. Carthage's last great army collapsed. Hannibal survived, but the war he had begun many years earlier was effectively over. Carthage accepted harsh peace terms, lost its military power, and became dependent on Roman permission. Scipio received the name Africanus. Rome celebrated the commander who had finally defeated Hannibal. But Hannibal's story did not end at Zama. His next battle would be fought inside Carthage itself. Years later, Hannibal became a leading official and tried to reform Carthage's damaged government. He attacked corruption, reorganized public finances, and challenged families that had controlled the city. His reforms made enemies among powerful Carthaginians, who accused him before Rome. Roman officials came to investigate, and Hannibal understood that remaining in Carthage was no longer safe. He escaped into exile and offered his experience to rulers who still opposed Roman expansion. Even without an army, the old general remained dangerous because Rome still feared his knowledge. Eventually, Roman pressure reached the kingdom where Hannibal had found protection in his final years. Believing that capture was near, Hannibal chose death rather than becoming a Roman prisoner. The exact year remains uncertain, but Rome's most famous enemy was finally gone. Hannibal never conquered Rome. Yet he changed Rome by forcing it to become stronger, more patient, and more dangerous. His greatest victory could not win the war, but his name survived every empire that tried to erase it.